In a world where everything vibrates, everything breathes, everything pulses with an invisible frequency, there exists an ancient knowledge, hidden for centuries, reserved only for those brave enough to peer beyond the veil. Living energy is not just a book. It is a secret key, a mystical code that unlocks the doors to a reality many sense, but few truly understand. Inspired by the sacred writings and esoteric wisdom of Helena Blavatsky, this audiobook does more than inform you. It transforms you. Prepare to dive into the mysteries of vibration. You will discover how thought shapes matter, how intention directs energy, and how you can awaken your inner power to reshape your surroundings, your body, and your destiny. This is no ordinary journey. It is a voyage into the depths of the soul and the heights of consciousness, because those who master vibration master life. Before form existed, thought vibrated. Before thought arose, will pulsed, and within the will, without desire, slept the seed of all worlds. Thus begins this treatise, not written for the mind that seeks to understand, but for the soul that remembers. It is not a manual of techniques to achieve, nor a collection of ideas to analyze. It is a vibrational architecture whose sole purpose is to reveal to the reader their condition as a primordial emitter. Because the human being was not born to receive, he was forged to project. What you call reality is a solidified projection of your inner images. The matter surrounding you is the geometric reflection of your vibrational field, not what you occasionally think, but what you continuously sustain from your core. That which vibrates even in your silence, that which you emit even in denial, that which you project even as you sleep. This work does not seek to convince you of this, it simply declares it, because that which is eternal does not need to be proven, it only needs to be remembered. The secret wisdom known by all true initiates, from the Vedic rishis to the Chaldean philosophers, from the Kabbalists of the desert to the guardians of the White Mountain, never taught that reality is attracted. It taught that reality is emitted. The difference is absolute. The first waits, the second creates, the first begs, the second commands. What this treatise offers is the internal map of the hidden architect who sleeps within you, the emitter you were before you incarnated, the projector who never stopped creating, even when you believed otherwise. Here you will not find inspiration, you will find decree. You will not find comfort, you will find power. You will not find formulas to please the universe. You will find the certainty that you are that universe in its densest and most forgotten form. Each chapter of this book is structured like a staircase, not a climb of emotional highs, but a reconstitution of vibration. You are not here to accumulate knowledge. You are here to dismantle ignorance. And ignorance is not the absence of data. It is the forgetting of your vibrational identity. You will remember within these pages that you do not think, you shape, that you do not desire, you emit, that you do not affirm, you project, that you do not create with the rational mind, but with the coherent frequency that sustains your atmosphere. And if that frequency is pure, the universe has no choice. It must obey. This is not a metaphor. It is the law. I have not come to bring you theories. I have come to return you to your function. Are you willing to abandon the inherited image of who you thought you were? Are you ready to stop asking and start emitting? Are you prepared to cease searching for external signs and begin generating internal causes? Then open this treatise, not to read, but to remember. Because everything you are living, right now in this very moment, was already thought by you, already felt by you, already commanded by you. And the time has come to make it conscious. The Silent Emitter, a treatise on vibration and reality, based on the teachings of Helena Blavatsky. We've noticed that over 80% of those who visit our channel are not subscribed. You can support this project by pressing the subscribe button and giving this video a like. Thank you for inspiring us to continue creating more and better content for you. Are you ready to transform your life? Chapter 1. On vibration as the cause of form. Everything that exists is the freezing of an internal emission. Form is solidified vibration. There is nothing in the visible, audible, or tangible universe that was not first vibration, and there is no vibration when sustained with intensity and coherence that does not become form. This axiom, understood only by initiates of the sacred schools, whether in the Orphic mysteries, the temples of 10 Mamenes, or the caves of Tibetan bodhisattvas, constitutes the cornerstone of the sacred art of manifestation. All is vibration, but not all vibration is creative. Only that which is held with awakened will and stabilized emotion acquires the degree of densification needed to penetrate the subtle layers of the universal field and sculpt within it a visible architecture. The universe does not create by chance, it creates by resonance. And if the world responds to who you are, it is not because the world listens to you, but because you emit it. Matter is nothing but energy whose frequency has been slowed down by the persistence of the thought that originated it. The density of things is merely the age of their vibration. That which is sustained long enough takes form. For this reason, all that you experience is not the result of a foreign will, nor the expression of external justice. It is the exact mirror of your emission. Reality does not happen, it is structured, and it is not built from the outside in, but from your atmosphere down to the lower layers of the physical plane. Life does not come to you, it radiates from you. The ancients knew that every sound creates form, that every thought is an inaudible sound, and that when this sound is paired with a coherent emotion and sustained over time, it acts like an invisible chisel carving matter into shape. In the hidden doctrine of the Dik Beda, it is taught, Bak the word is the mother of the gods. From her emerged Armi, Balo, Surya, and in the emerald tablet of Hermes Trismegistus, that which is above is like that which is below, and that which is below is like that which is above, to accomplish the miracles of one single thing. That one thing is none other than the central vibration of the soul, which when sustained gives birth to form, to stars, to passions, and to destinies. He who does not vibrate consciously vibrates by habit, and what vibrates by habit projects repeated worlds. Most human beings do not live, they recycle. They do not create, they imitate inherited fields. They do not project from their essence, they reproduce from the shadow. Every vibrational pattern that is not observed becomes inertial form. This is why experiences repeat, why relationships recycle, why the same failures return, why empty successes echo again. Because the sleeping soul continues to emit the image it was programmed with, either in childhood or in previous incarnations. And the obedient universe does not respond to conscious requests, but to constant vibration. Magic does not lie in desire, it lies in sustainment, not in imagining, but in emitting with an intensity that matches the core of certainty. Thought is the first architect, emotion is the builder, and will is the guardian of form. Do you understand? Then know this, there is no matter that was not once vibration. There is no vibration that was not emitted from some conscious being. And there is no form that is not an echo of a sustained frequency. The universe is vibrational. Life is a mirror. You are not a mere observer, you are a generator. Chapter 2. Thought as a vibrational unit. Not every idea creates, only the one sustained with emotional fire. The mind, as the architect, becomes unified in this truth. There is nothing more underestimated in the profane world than thought, and nothing more closely guarded by the initiate than the very act of thinking. For what the unawakened call a spontaneous function of the brain, ephemeral, weightless, inconsequential, is, in truth, the primary instrument by which the soul projects, directs, and alters both visible and invisible reality. Each thought is a vibrational unit, and as such a seed of form, a spark of architecture. But this unit is not defined by the logical content of the idea, nor by its elegant formulation, not even by its symbolic beauty. It is defined only by its frequency, and that frequency is born from a precise alliance between three centers: the thinking mind, the feeling heart, and the sustaining will. When these three are in harmony, the thought becomes creative. When they contradict each other, the thought dissolves, disperses, or becomes an agent of confusion. So taught the Egyptian hierophants in their sealed schools. Thought becomes closed geometry only when the fire of the heart feeds it, and the spear of will directs it. And the Vedic Brahmins affirmed, Manas without bhakti is ashes without flame, but manas with bhakti and tapas becomes the fire that gives birth to worlds. This must be clearly understood. To think is not merely to imagine, and thinking in its occult sense is to emit a coherent frequency that configures the ether and compels it to take shape. But this coherence is not a passive condition. It is the result of inner training, emotional alchemy, and vibrational discipline. Because thought does not arise from the intellect, it is born from the monad and descends through the planes. And if in that descent it encounters contradiction, it fragments. It weakens. This is why in most human beings thoughts do not create, they dissolve. This is why affirmations fail, decrees fall flat, and visualizations don't materialize. Because the mind emits one signal but the emotion emits another. And where there is duality, there is no creation, only dissonance. For thought to function as an effective vibrational unit, it must meet three conditions. First, conceptual clarity, which arises from a disciplined mind free of noise, capable of holding an image without being scattered by useless associations or underlying fears. Second, emotional strength, which comes from an aligned heart, able to feel the idea as real, charging it with vital energy, infusing it with vibrational intensity. Third, voluntary direction, which stems from the center of being and gives the thought a firm, unwavering, unambiguous trajectory. These three forces form what the ancient schools called the generating triangle. When an idea is born from that triangle, the ether responds instantly. The image begins to attract subtle forms. It takes shape as a vibrational pattern, and then, if sustained, it passes through the veils until it becomes part of the physical plane. That is authentic creation. Now, the ordinary human mind is not unified. It lives fragmented. It emits fleeting thoughts filled with contradiction. It thinks one thing, feels another, desires a third, and acts under a fourth force it doesn't even recognize. This disassociation is the norm in post-Atlantean humanity, whose higher faculties were veiled by the vibrational fall of its races. That is why true spiritual work does not begin in religion or morality. It begins in the unification of the mind. For only a unified mind can become an architect of the field. A unified mind is not a silent mind. It is a coherent one. It may entertain many thoughts, but all aligned in the same sequence. It may move in many directions, but always from a common center. And that center is not logic nor reason. It is the base vibration of the soul. This is why the ancient sages did not think as we do. They visualized and felt each thought as if it had already occurred. And so they projected it, not with effort, but with alignment. They knew thought is not a desire, it is a hidden verb. And like every verb, when pronounced in the inner temple of the soul, it becomes a command to the ether. Creative thought, then, is not a spontaneous function. It is a vibrational ritual. It is not enough to think something repeatedly. You must think it from your center, feel it as true, hold it without interruption, and never contradict it with opposing emotions or incoherent actions. Only then does the vibrational unit remain stable and begin to attract the elements that resonate with its manifestation. This is why unconscious thoughts are dangerous, because they too emit, they vibrate, they create. Not because they are directed with intention, but because they are sustained without interruption. Chronic fear is a sustained thought. Doubt is a thought disguised as prudence. Resentment is a thought charged with painful memory. And all of this becomes structural patterns in the energy field, which then shapes the experiences of life. Therefore, it is not what you consciously think that creates your world. It is what you constantly vibrate without observation. And that too is thought, deep thought installed at the foundation of your identity. The mind is the potter of the soul, but it does not work alone. It needs emotion as fire and will as the mold. This is why the true magician does not think with the head. He thinks with his whole being, and his thought becomes creation. Learn then to think again, not as the world teaches, but as the initiates have always done. From the center, with clear emotion, with intention that knows no fracture. And remember, one single thought sustained with fire is worth more than 1,000 scattered ideas. For one true thought is a command given to the universe, and the universe, being vibration, responds to the one who vibrates with truth. Chapter 3. The word as an instrument of configuration. Language is not expression. It is programming of the field. Since the dawn of truly inspired civilizations, not mere social organizations improperly called cultures, the word was understood not as a means of communication, but as a causal force. One did not speak to inform, one spoke to configure. Words were not uttered to express emotions, but to organize the elements. The word, in its hidden sense, is not a symbol of thought. It is the vibrational mold that determines the course of events. When it is said, "In the beginning was the word," it does not refer to an anthropomorphic deity declaiming into the void. It speaks of the conscious vibration self-emitted by the Logos, the living archetype of all that is to be. The word is not human speech. It is a vibratory emission imbued with intention, sustained by will, and charged with coherent emotional force. The ancient Chaldean priests, custodians of this truth, practiced what they called dictum conditum, the act of pronouncing words from a specific vibrational state, knowing that sound emitted from inner coherence alters the arrangement of subtle atoms in the etheric plane. Each word was a command, each vowel a key, each phoneme a vibrational gateway to a possible reality. And here is where modern man, having degraded language to the level of triviality, has lost his creative power. He believes that to speak is to describe, that to declare is to emote. But in the hidden world, everything spoken, even without faith, vibrates, and what vibrates configures. Thus, the human being, without knowing it, is constantly shaping his field through his words, even if they are foolish, empty, or automatic. Every word spoken with emotional intensity becomes an instruction. It is not the logic of the discourse that matters, but its vibratory charge. The universe does not respond to semantic content. It responds to the emitted pattern. When you say, "I can't," even in jest, you're writing a vibrational line into your field that blocks certain potentialities. When you say, "This always happens to me," you are carving a resonant circuit that, through repetition, becomes dense, becomes form. The secret scriptures of the desert, passed down among the monks of the Circle of Amu, predating the Abrahamic degeneration, proclaimed, "Each word is a seal, each seal is a form, and each form remains until it is rewritten." This is why the great initiates guarded their words, as a priest tends the fire on the altar. They did not speak idly. They did not comment unnecessarily. They did not name without cause, because they knew, once the word is spoken, it cannot be retrieved. It continues vibrating. It continues acting. It continues shaping until a higher, purer, more coherent word replaces it. Language is spiritual technology. Every word is a vibrational artifact. It alters the field, refines it or contaminates it. Repetition fixes it. Emotion amplifies it. Contradiction destroys it. Just as there are foods that nourish and others that poison, so too are there words that elevate and words that intoxicate. This is why in ancient temples the apprentice would pass through a vow of silence, not as punishment, but as purification. For until he had mastered his internal vibration, everything that emerged from his mouth would be a flawed construction, a distorted emission, a dangerous interference in the fabric of reality. The outer language reveals the inner one, and the inner language is the true cause of the energy field. So beyond what you say aloud, it matters what you say to yourself, not what you declare in public, but what you murmur in your mind when no one is listening. Because that murmured thought, repeated again and again, becomes your base pattern, and that pattern is what configures your destiny. In the veiled texts of the Zohar, at the heart of true hidden Kabbalah, it is taught, "The name hides the form, and what is named takes place in the world." To name in this science is not to categorize, it is to give vibrational existence. What you name, you fix. What you do not name dominates you from the shadows. So if you name your wound, you give it form. And if you give it form, you can work with it. But if you hide it, it will continue to emit from your field without your awareness, and it will draw in whatever resonates with it. The name, in its esoteric sense, is the vibrational formula of a thing. To name is to create. To name is to give body in the subtle field. This is why the Magi of old did not speak their true desires until they had aligned them with the pure fire of will. And it is also why the secret names of the gods were guarded beneath 7 seals, because to know the true name of an entity is to wield power over its vibration, just as to speak your true name from the soul is to summon your higher self and give it form. Now you understand, language is not trivial. Every phrase spoken carelessly is an unconscious act of creation. Every expression of doubt, hatred, or weakness generates a vibration that shapes the environment, not as punishment but infidelity, because the universe does not respond to your intention, it responds to your emission. Want to change your reality, change your word, want to escape the cycle, change your narrative, want to radiate power, speak from the center because the center does not lie, and what is emitted from the center creates without interference. This is why true silence is not the absence of words, it is the presence of vibration. And the true word is not a mental declaration, but geometric fire emitted from coherence. Refine your word and purify your speech, and speak little, but speak from the soul, and what you say will become law. Chapter 4. From Mental Image to Material. Pattern. Visualization as a geometry of resonance. What is seen within arranges what is outside. Before the universe existed as measurable space, before time vibrated in cycles, and before substance crystallized into form, all was unmanifested image, vibration in potential, geometry in a state of pre-being. And that first image, upheld from the incombustible absolute, projected itself onto the plane of manifestation as cosmos, as law, as structure. This is why every visible creation is the result of an archetypal image, held with intensity, with will, and with purity. Visualization, in its deepest and most sealed meaning, is not fantasy, nor a method of self-suggestion, as the emotionally driven materialists would believe. It is not a psychological tool. It is the hidden act by which the being, aligned with its vibrational center, projects an internal figure onto the etheric field. And this figure, when held with unwavering faith, begins to mold the astral substance and finally condense into the physical world. This image need not be logical or detailed. It must be coherent, vibrationally pure, and sustained with certainty. The mistake of the modern being, lost among techniques of affirmation and emotionally charged desires, is to visualize from lack, to project from urgency, to create from hunger. But no image born of lower desire can form stable reality, because lower desire is unstable vibration, crossed frequencies, chaotic patterns. Only the soul, when it remembers its original state, can perceive an image with the power to create without distortion. Visualization is not imagining what one wants. Visualization is remembering what is already true on another plane. An effective image is not invented, it is evoked. The ancient sages of the Black Desert, heirs of a degenerated Atlantean tradition and hidden in the caves of Libya, would say, "You will not see what you desire, you will see what vibrates with you." And in the non-canonical writings of the Gospel of Philip, attributed to the deepest Gnostic circles, it is written, "He who sees not from fullness prolongs the void, but he who sees from being projects the form." Every internal image is a vibratory geometry, and every geometry, held in resonance, brings order. A mental image is not just a visual thought, it is a frequency, a pattern, a living structure inscribed in the energetic field. And this structure, if coherent with the core of your vibrational identity, begins to reorganize your surroundings to manifest itself. But if it is incompatible, if you vibrate fear, doubt, or contradiction, the image dissolves, rebounds, or creates confusion. This is the true art of visualization, not to imagine with force, but to remember with certainty. Not to project from hunger, but to sustain from identity. An image creates not by its emotional intensity in the moment, but by its vibrational stability. The longer you hold an image without distorting it with doubts, fears, or conflicting desires, the more clearly it begins to shape the field around you. This is the true alchemy of thought form, to turn an inner vision into a solid pattern in the outer world, not through effort, but through persistence. This is why the initiates of the White Valley, descendants of the solar lineage from Tibet before its isolation, taught their disciples to carry the image in their chest, not in their forehead. Because the image retained only by the mind fragments, but the image held with body, emotion, and unified will inscribes itself into the ether as a vibratory decree. Understand this. Every visualization is an energetic architecture. Every mental image is an order to the quantum field. Every shape you see within yourself, if sustained, begins to organize the elements around you to make itself real. But beware, not all images create beauty. The same applies to forms distorted by trauma, the recurring scenes of failure, the memories of pain sustained by fear. These too are visualizations, though unconscious. They are geometries and they shape the field. Many live chaotic lives not because they want to, but because they unknowingly project chaotic images. The soul does not distinguish between what you voluntarily envision and what you repeatedly tolerate. If you hold an image with your attention, you are feeding it. If you repeat it without correcting it, you are solidifying it. And once it becomes solid, you will live it. That is why the true magician's first task is not to project new images, but to purify the old ones, to deprogram inherited images, to destroy mental forms that no longer represent the soul's truth. And once the field has been cleansed, to begin projecting with geometric clarity. The later Hermetic texts, especially the Libera Hermetis, attributed to Fosimo of Panopolis, state, "See not with the eye that desires, but with the eye that gives form. For he who desires imagines from emptiness, but he who gives form remembers from fullness." In the Sufi manuscripts of the Al-Qira lineage, it was taught that each soul possesses an inner mirror, a vibratory surface where every authentic image is reflected without distortion. The initiate's task was to clean that mirror of emotional dust and foreign doctrines until the internal vision matched the external reality. When that happened, the world could not resist. It had to align. Visualization, then, is not manipulation of reality. It is revelation. It is not interference with the external. It is alignment with what already vibrates in another dimension. If that alignment is pure, the field responds. If it is false, it collapses. True visualization is an act of vibrational humility. It does not demand. It does not beg. It simply sees from truth and waits in silence. So practice. Close your eyes. Do not think. Evoke an image that represents what your soul already knows. Do not decorate it, do not force it, and just feel it, as if it were already familiar. Then breathe within it, walk with it, sleep with it. Make that image your new atmosphere, and the obedient world will rearrange itself. Because you do not create what you desire. You create what you can clearly and consistently see, and every pure image becomes form. For the geometry of the soul is law, and what you see from the soul, the universe manifests without exception, without delay, and without error. Chapter 5. The emitter and the projector of vibrational identity. You do not attract what you desire. You attract what you sustain without contradiction. The universe does not respond to your wishes. It responds to your emission. And your emission does not come from what you think on the surface, nor from the words you repeat aloud, not even from the things you imagine with enthusiasm. Your true emission is born from the vibrational identity you inhabit in silence. It comes from the hidden frequency that pulses within you when you are not acting, not affirming, not asking. You are not a passive magnet waiting for the world to give you what you need. You are an active projector, shaping the world around you second by second, according to the pattern you hold within your field. The world is not something offered to you. You mold it. And you do not mold it with intention but with coherence, because what manifests is not what you want, but what you are vibrationally. What happens to you is not punishment, it is return. It is not a mistake, it is a mirror. It is not external interference, it is sustained emanation. So taught the true masters of the primordial tradition, masters from schools long extinguished, veiled behind names the common mind never came to know. In the oldest annals of the Zohar, in the fragments of the Seker Bear, in the lost diagrams of the school of Yin, and in the esoteric teachings of Mithra, the same truth echoes again and again. The world is projection, not as a symbol, not as a metaphor, but as a literal fact. Every figure, every event, every relationship that endures in your life is a form projected from the field of your vibrational identity. And this identity is not your name. It is not your personal story. It is not your opinion of yourself. It is the frequency your soul carries like an unspoken melody, a tone that comes before every word you say. This is why two people can desire the same thing and get completely opposite results, because what separates them is not willpower, but the field sustaining that desire. If the desire is a flower, identity is the soil, and the universe does not respond to the flower. It responds to the kind of earth it was planted in. So the essential question is not, what do I want? But from what identity am I wanting? Because if you desire prosperity from a vibrational identity of lack, you will project obstacles. If you long for love from a vibrational identity of unworthiness, you will summon abandonment. If you seek health from a vibrational identity of devaluation, you will attract exhaustion. Not because you deserve it, but because you're sustaining it without realizing it. This is what the ancients called the hidden name. Every soul carries a vibrational name that expresses its true internal state. And this name, this frequency, not a word, is what the universe obeys. In the higher teachings of Kabbalah, the true work is not about changing circumstances, but about changing the name. Because to change the name is to change the emission, and to change the emission is to change reality. The modern seeker's mistake is trying to attract what they desire without modifying what they emit. They want peace but vibrate anxiety. They want freedom but emit fear. They want abundance but carry an identity built on effort, sacrifice, or self-sabotage. So their field is divided, and what is divided cannot manifest. Because, as was already said, the quantum field does not respond to intention. It responds to coherence. Therefore, the work is not to wish harder, but to reconfigure the emitter. And the emitter is your vibrational identity. Not the one you declare, but the one you carry. The one reflected in your posture, in your breath, and in your silence, in how you walk into a room, in how you receive a word, in how you look and how you listen. All of that is vibration, all of that is emission. And the universe doesn't care about your phrases. It aligns with your tone. Want to know your vibrational identity? Don't analyze, observe. What pattern repeats in your life? What kinds of events or relationships keep returning? What energy do others feel when you're present? What message vibrates in your body when no one is watching? There lies your name. There lies your true emission. And until that frequency changes, nothing profound can be transformed. You can change cities, partners, careers, habits, beliefs. But if you don't change your vibrational identity, what comes back to you will always be the same, dressed in different forms. Vibrational identity cannot be altered with empty affirmations. It transforms through conscious practice, by inhabiting a new frequency, not as a mask, not as a mental strategy, but as a deep alignment of emotion, thought, body, and will. This was the practice of the silent magicians of the Antares school, whose existence faded with the fall of the last Syrian temple. They would choose a quality, not a desire, but a frequency, and sustain it for days, weeks, even years. They didn't talk about it, they embodied it. They walked as if they already were it. They breathed as if they were already living it. And in time, the world could not help but reshape itself in their image, because they no longer emitted the old name. They had embodied another, do you understand? It is not what you seek that determines your life. It is what you project from your vibrational name. You are not what you declare. You are not what you desire. You are what you carry when you are silent. And that the universe cannot ignore, so practice. Choose a frequency, an identity you long to inhabit. Feel it, not as aspiration, but as memory. Ask yourself, how would the being who already vibrates in this frequency walk? How would they breathe? How would they look, listen, endure, and release? Then inhabit that frequency for 1 hour. Not as performance, but as a vibrational experiment. Observe what happens and repeat, because the world does not respond to your story, it responds to your name. And if you change your name, everything that happens to you will change with it. Not by miracle, by correspondence, not by external intervention, but by resonance. You are the emitter, you are the projector, and your life is the material pattern of what you have sustained until now. Chapter 6. Doubt as inverted magic. Double thinking creates distortion in your emission. It is inverted magic. Every vibrational emission that arises purely and is held steadily becomes architecture of the world. But if that emission is infused with an invisible, contradictory, doubtful frequency, the resulting pattern is not nullified, it is distorted. This distortion is the root of what, in true esoteric science, is called inverted magic. Doubt, from the common perspective, seems harmless, just a sign of caution or rationality. But from the perspective of the emitter, doubt is energetic dissonance. It is a vibrational virus that fractures the field and forces it to emit in opposing directions. Just as a detuned string ruins a symphony, sustained doubt, however silent, breaks the coherent projection and produces a reversed echo. There is no neutral thought, no word without charge, no emotion without consequence. Every emission, no matter how small, leaves a trace in the fabric of the field. Doubt is not just insecurity. It is a contradictory command given to the universe. Every time you desire something but accompany it with fear, suspicion, or a "what if it doesn't happen?" you are fragmenting the vibrational instruction, and the universe, who responds only to coherence, receives a broken command. The universe does not punish this fracture. It reflects it. It gives you exactly the distortion you emitted, and thus arise half-realities, diluted results, ambiguous relationships, and broken paths, not because the universe withholds your desire, but because you cannot clearly receive what you emit ambiguously. The Egyptian magicians who served in the inner circles of the temples of Karnak understood this well. The first lesson for any initiate was not to invoke, but to hold a vibration without fracture. They knew a divided thought is like a split arrow in flight. It never reaches its mark. In the Gospel of Truth attributed to the Valentinian Gnostics, it is written, "He who believes without union is divided, and what is divided cannot remain." This teaching, though theological in appearance, is actually energetic law. What is not held as a single vibration cannot remain in manifestation. If your emotion says yes, but your body hesitates, if your thought affirms, but your words deny, if your intention proclaims, but your actions sabotage, then your field emits multiple signals at once, and the result is manifest incoherence. The hidden schools called this internal fracture the shadow of double thought. It is not mere hesitation. It is the inversion of creative energy. Every sustained thought becomes invocation, and if that thought is contaminated by a conflicting frequency, what you invoke is not creation, but suspension, dissolution, or a return to chaos. In the Mutus Liber, the silent book of the alchemists, the adept is shown contemplating two intertwined serpents, one of light, one of darkness. At his feet, a flower that does not bloom. The inscription reads, "Double fire, double death." The message is clear. Contradictory energy prevents creation from blooming. Where there is crossed thought, where there are declarations without faith, where there are mechanical affirmations with no emotional backing, there is no possible alchemy. Here lies the root of inverted magic, when you affirm one thing but vibrate another, when you decree aloud but your emotional field emits the opposite, when you visualize with desire but cannot hold certainty. You are practicing magic, yes, but inverted magic. You are not creating the result you want, you are feeding its opposite. Doubt is not just a mental state, it is a vibrational command. And the universe, as a faithful field, does not judge. It reflects. Give it ambiguity, it gives back ambiguity. Give it certainty, it gives back form. Hold a divided pattern, and it returns a pattern of chaos. The ancient sages of Anatolia, in the lost tradition of the inner eye circle, taught that double thinking was the greatest enemy of the mage. Not because it was an external force, but because it was an internal fracture. They used to say, there is no demon more effective than the echo of yes mixed with no. Because that echo does not just prevent manifestation. It generates energy structures that perpetuate confusion. How is doubt neutralized? Not through repression, not through mental struggle, but through vibrational substitution. You must make visible what was hidden, name the doubt, pull it from the body. Identify the pattern, then choose a new frequency, not as escape, but as sustained decision. This requires a practice that is not emotional but geometric. It is not about feeling better. It is about aligning every plane of being into a single emission, thought, emotion, word, body, and intention, all saying the same thing. Only then is there a unified field. Only from that field can creation occur, so practice the art of coherent emission. Choose a true affirmation. Feel whether your body accepts or resists it. Notice if a voice in your mind immediately rejects it. Identify that rejection, name it. Do not flee, do not judge. Then rewrite the phrase from a deeper place, and hold that new emission for hours, days, weeks, without fracture, without contradiction. Only then can the universe offer you a precise creation. Remember, doubt is not prudence, it is distortion. It is not awareness, it is fracture. And where there is fracture, there can be no stable form. The universe responds to clarity, and clarity is what the soul becomes when it has stopped arguing with itself. Chapter 7. The Field as the Soul's Record. Your energetic atmosphere never stops. Everything is recorded. Everything returns. Just as the ancient scribe carved the decrees of the pharaohs onto stone tablets, so too does the soul imprint every one of its emissions onto the invisible fabric that surrounds it. And this fabric is not metaphorical. It is a real, sensitive, and structured field whose purpose is not to protect the soul as a barrier, but to register, emit, and reflect every frequency it has held within. The sages of Akasha called it the garment of light. Syrian seers referred to it as the cloak of return, and the Atlantean initiates named it the ring of the mirror. This field is not governed by rational consciousness. It is shaped by sustained emotional frequency, repeated vibration over time, the dominant tone of one's deep identity. Every recurring thought, every tolerated emotion, every word spoken with intention, every image visualized with belief. This is energy inscribed. It does not vanish, it is not forgotten. It is stored, and from that storage, the resonant structure we later call life begins to take form. The field does not judge. The field does not discern between what you want and what you fear, between what you love and what you avoid, between what you desire and what you reject. It simply records what you hold and mirrors it back. Then, as an obedient reflection of the energy it receives, it returns it in the form of circumstances, encounters, repetitions, synchronicities, and silences. There is no randomness, only feedback. So when you believe something is already resolved because you've stopped consciously thinking about it, but you haven't cleared it vibrationally, it returns, not as punishment, but as an unresolved echo. What hasn't been transmuted in the field remains suspended, and the suspended seeks manifestation to be completed. When the soul incarnates, it doesn't just inherit a physical body, It carries with it a vibrational field that doesn't begin in this life. That field is the sum of all frequencies sustained in other incarnations, and also the result of all present vibrational emissions. This field is not composed of memories, but of patterns. Patterns that don't just live in it, they shape it, they tune or cloud it, and from that structure the soul attracts its experiences. This is how the Hermetists of Upper Egypt taught. He who does not cleanse his field will repeat his story. He who transmutes his emission organizes his destiny. There is no such thing as a new life if the field continues to vibrate with old configurations, because the field is more loyal than memory, and until there is a conscious vibrational reprogramming, the soul will walk in circles, calling evolution what is actually repetition. Understand this: the field is dynamic but not spontaneous. It responds to your emission, but it does not invent it. It does not make decisions. It merely returns what has been held. If you've been emitting fear for years and only tried to think positively for a few weeks, the field will still resonate with that pattern of fear, not out of cruelty, but out of vibrational loyalty. Because everything emitted is recorded, and what is recorded seeks form. Thus the soul becomes the sculptor of its existence, and the field, the marble on which its vibrations carve their shape. A moment of clarity is not enough. That clarity must be sustained until the field is fully rewritten. The field does not respond to brief impulses, it responds to permanence, and it is in permanence that true transformation occurs. This was known by the guardians of the schools of light in Tartaria, who taught that to alter a recorded pattern in the field, it was necessary to hold a new frequency for 42 days without interruption. Intention was not enough. One had to inhabit the new vibration, like one lives in a new home, like one puts on a new garment. Only what is sustained can reprogram. The energetic atmosphere you carry is your deepest reality. Not what you think, not what you do, not what you declare, but what you emanate without realizing it, when everything is silent, when no one is watching, when judgment is absent. That is your vibrational truth, and that truth is what configures the events of your life. You want to change your reality. Don't change your actions first. Change your atmosphere. Change your field. How is this done? Start by observing. What emotion inhabits your body the most without your awareness? What thought repeats the most, even in silence? What inner images do you sustain without noticing? Then choose an opposite frequency, but tune your soul, not by force, but by memory, because the field responds more strongly to what it remembers than to what it learns. If you vibrated fear, begin to emit trust. If you vibrated scarcity, begin to emit sufficiency. If you vibrated guilt, begin to emit forgiveness, but don't declare it, live it. Make it your atmosphere, hold that frequency for hours, days, weeks, and the field, in its obedience, will begin to return it. Because the field doesn't negotiate, it doesn't interpret, it doesn't wait, it only reflects. Everything you once vibrated left a trace, everything you sustained is still acting, everything you emit now will become form tomorrow. The field is the silent scribe of your soul and your life, the faithful reading of what it has written. Chapter 8. See the body as a resonant temple. Emotions sealed within organs, the body vibrates what the soul remains silent about. The body is not just a physiological mechanism or a biological machine accidentally gifted with consciousness. The body is a temple, not symbolically or allegorically, but architecturally. An energetic design in which every organ, every nerve, every tissue, and every cell vibrates like a string tuned to the rhythm of the soul that inhabits it. Within it, the oldest vibrational decrees are manifested. Within it, the deepest secrets of embodied memory resound. There is no silence in the body. Even when we are quiet, even when we fake stillness, the body continues to emit, to feel, to record, because the body is the first mirror of the soul. And what is not spoken, what is not processed, what is not transfigured into consciousness, stays there. Encapsulated as tension, as a symptom, as fatigue, illness, or rigidity. Every unexpressed emotion does not disappear. It moves into the organ that vibrates in the same frequency and remains there, like a forgotten sheet of music still playing, like an echo still influencing, like an energetic seal that alters the flow of life force. This is not metaphor. It is vibrational law. Unprocessed fear tightens in the belly where the root of survival lies. Unreleased sorrow weighs on the chest, for the heart is not just muscle but a magnetic knot. Unacknowledged anger coils in the back, the shoulders, the arms, for these are the parts that were meant to act, to strike, to resist. Guilt lodges in the liver, shame in the throat, lack of self-worth in the knees and feet. Thus the body becomes a map of the wounded soul, but also the instrument of its liberation. Because what was sealed can be felt, recognized, and vibrated with presence, and therefore transmuted. This is not about healing from the mind or blaming the body as if it were guilty. It is about inhabiting the body as what it truly is, an oracle. So taught the sages of the Indus Valley long before vibrational science was buried by dogma. They affirmed, the body does not become ill, it responds. The body does not fail, it communicates. In the hidden texts of the Kachimeda school, the body was defined as the sacred instrument of resonance, where the light of the soul is translated into experience. This is why every part of the body has a specific vibration. Every organ resonates with an emotion. Every joint is a doorway that can open or close depending on the frequency it holds. This isn't learned through anatomy. It is remembered through attention. What part of your body aches when you withhold a truth? Where does your flesh tighten when you lie to yourself? What part weakens when you act from a false identity? You don't need years of study. You need presence. Because when the body is truly listened to, it speaks with the truth the mind has long forgotten. What you call discomfort is often the soul trying to awaken a dormant frequency. What you label illness is often a trapped emotion waiting to be released. And what you identify as disease is often the last voice the body uses to express what could not exit in any other way. This was known by the inner alchemists, who taught that true transmutation does not begin in the mind, it begins in the flesh. To heal the soul, one must first inhabit the body in truth. The body doesn't need to be forced with discipline. It needs to be heard as an altar. It does not ask for effort, it asks for sincerity. Because only when you recognize which emotion has been sealed within can you begin to free the vibrational pattern that holds it. How is this done? Not through analysis, not through forced techniques, but through embodied presence. Close your eyes. Bring your attention to a part of your body where you feel tension, discomfort, weight, or silence. Ask inwardly, what am I feeling here that I haven't said? Don't wait for words. Wait for an image, an emotion, a memory. Acknowledge it, breathe into it, and simply allow that part to vibrate, to tremble, to open or release, because energy does not need to be understood. It needs to be felt, with consciousness. And when the body is inhabited in that way, it becomes a teacher. It no longer gets sick. It no longer screams. It simply vibrates. And when that vibration is pure, it is health. Remember this, what you silence, the body speaks. What you avoid, the body takes. What you reject, the body holds. And when you stop rejecting, avoiding, and silencing, the body begins to release. Because the soul cannot fully vibrate if the body still carries its shadow. The body is a temple, yes, but it is also an altar, an oracle, a mirror, and a gate. And when you inhabit it as such, the entire field rearranges. Chapter 9. Emotion as a secret command. It is not the word that creates, but the sustained feeling held as pure vibration. Before the universe responded to the spoken word, before the mind could conceive an image or an articulated thought, there was already a primordial emotion vibrating, not as a psychological reaction, but as an ordering force, a living intention, a radiant pulse of the soul that shapes the subtle realms with geometric precision. The great esoteric traditions of antiquity, the ones that left no visible temples, only records etched in the ether and in the blood of the initiates. Did they know this? Undoubtedly. Emotion is the first creative language. Not superficial affection, not profane sentimentality, but a sustained vibratory pulse impressed upon the field of existence, determining what becomes visible and what remains hidden. Words can lie, images can shift, thoughts can be deceived, but sustained emotion is irrevocable, not because the universe punishes, but because the universe obeys the deepest pattern. And that pattern is not expressed in phrases, but in continuous vibration. A vibration not spoken by the mouth, but emitted by the soul. This vibration is pure emotion, uncontaminated by inner conflict, undivided by opposing beliefs, unfragmented by contradictions. In the Book of Enoch, whose text was veiled for centuries and preserved only in Ethiopian and Slavic codices, it is written, "And it was given to the children of men the art of moving the earth with their emotion, and commanding the stars with the vibration of their soul." This teaching, excluded from the canon for its dangerous potency, reveals the essential: emotion is not an effect, but a vibratory cause. What you feel in totality shapes the world, not from desire, but from the non-verbal decree of your inner state. That is why it is not enough to think about what you want, to declare it, or even to visualize it. You must feel it as a vibrational truth. Feel it, not once, not as a fleeting impulse, but as a habitual frequency, an energetic atmosphere that does not fade when you are silent or at rest. The universe does not listen to your phrases, it listens to your field, and that field does not respond to logic or spoken intention. It responds to the emotion you emit without even realizing it. So taught the initiates of the underground schools of Aksum, where no mantras were recited, but where vibrational sustenance was practiced. They said, "The one who maintains joy in the presence of chaos is the master of the plane." Not because he suppresses, but because he has learned to vibrate from the center, not from reaction. Emotion as command is not enforced through force. It is not faked with enthusiasm. It is not programmed by mechanical repetition. It is held with purity, and that purity is not moral but resonant. A pure emotional field is one in which the frequency vibrates without interference, where what is felt does not contradict what is thought or what is said. It is an invisible coherence that penetrates everything. And what happens when you sustain an emotion in coherence? Matter responds, not as a miracle, but as a vibrational correspondence. Elements rearrange, bodies heal, relationships recalibrate, opportunities align, not because you are lucky, but because you have become the emitting node of an unshakable frequency. This was known by the alchemists of Mount Ararat, who taught that every emotion sustained through 42 breaths without contradiction creates an etheric seal, a vibrational inscription that begins to reorganize the disposition of the elements. They said what you sustain with purity becomes sacred geometry. But the opposite is also true. When you sustain contaminated emotions, guilt disguised as humility, fear disguised as prudence, lack disguised as desire, you imprint confused patterns into the field. And these patterns are obeyed with the same precision as the pure ones, because the universe does not distinguish between true and false. It distinguishes between coherence and contradiction. This is why so many people experience outcomes that oppose their intentions, not because they fail, not because they are unworthy, but because their dominant emotions contradict their conscious desires, and the universe, which responds only to the strongest frequency, returns what is sustained, not what is declared. So how do you transform emotion into a conscious command? First, by recognizing that emotion is not a passive state, it is an emission. Second, by understanding that every emotion can be held steadily. Third, by choosing an emotion aligned with what you want to live. And finally, by training both body and soul to emit it without interruption, not as an act, not as denial, but as a manifestation of power. Peace, for instance, is not the absence of conflict. It is a vibratory presence. Joy is not euphoria, it is certainty. Dignity is not pride, it is structural clarity. And when those emotions are sustained without dependence on external circumstances, they become silent commands that the universe cannot disobey. So practice. Choose a single emotion you want to use as your command today. Don't force it. Feel it. Remember a moment when you already lived it. Breathe into it. Walk in it. Speak from it. Hold that vibration for 5 minutes, then for an hour, then for a whole day. And observe. Do not wait for results. Just observe how the world begins to organize itself around you, because the universe does not respond to requests. It responds to vibrational states, and that state is signed not by your words but by your emotions. You do not create what you say. You create what you feel as true, even if unspoken, because emotion is the command that gives the order before the word is ever pronounced. Chapter 10. The quantum field as a mirror of emission. The world does not respond, it reflects. The field does not evaluate, it obeys. There is no external will shaping the destiny of men. There is no divine judgment that determines their fortune, nor is there blind chance drawing their path. The life you experience, every scene that unfolds in time, every face you encounter, every repeated circumstance, is nothing but the reverberation of an invisible field that surrounds and penetrates us, the quantum field. This field is not a theory and it is not a symbol. It is a subtle and vibrational substance, alive, sensitive, and obedient. Within it, the emissions of the soul are inscribed, not as passive records but as active molds that organize matter. The field does not reason, it does not interpret, it does not assess. The field obeys, and it obeys the dominant vibrational emission sustained by the soul, not superficial desire, not words spoken without conviction, not images projected with hunger. The field responds only to what is emitted with permanence, with inner coherence, and with embodied certainty. This principle was known in the remote ages by every mystery school that received its knowledge from the primordial light. The Aryans of Imabat, the sages of Herido, the prophets of the desert, all of them agreed on the essential truth. The world does not respond, it reflects. Life does not happen to you, it happens from you. There is no outside without inside, no destiny without emission, and no response without a signal. The universe makes no decisions for you. It does not weigh your merit or measure your morality. It reflects with absolute fidelity the vibrational pattern emitted from the core of your being, even when you are unaware of it. This is why so many say they seek healing, yet sustain the frequency of illness. They proclaim freedom, yet vibrate from fear. They declare abundance, yet emit scarcity. And the field, which can only return exactly what it receives, materializes the dominant frequency, not the noblest thought or the purest intention. Everything is a mirror, not as an inspirational metaphor, but as a structural law of the universe. Just as light, when it strikes a polished surface, returns at the precise angle of incidence, life too reflects back to you, without distortion, the internal image you hold. There is no form that wasn't preceded by emission, no experience that didn't begin as frequency. Once you understand this, you stop waiting, you stop stealing, you stop blaming, and you claim the inner power to observe your own field. What am I truly projecting? What image vibrates behind my words? What emotion have I held so long that I don't even know I'm emitting it? This act of self-inquiry is not psychological. It is vibrational. It is not about thinking better. It is about feeling from a different place. The quantum field is not neutral, but neither is it whimsical. It does not decide, it only reflects. It does not reward, it only reorganizes. And it does so with such precision that the patterns you repeat in your life are direct proof of the vibration you have yet to transmute. This is why everything emitted returns. This is why time is the stage upon which vibration takes form. And this is why changing your life requires changing the frequency projected from your core. Not the words you use, nor the ideas you hold intellectually. To alter the mirror, you do not break the reflection. You change the source of the emission. The real work is not outward, it is toward the center. And this center is not metaphysical or abstract. It is a real point of energetic emission, a radiant core found at the place where the soul and the body intertwine. From there, everything you are is broadcast as a continuous signal. And that signal shapes matter, organizes relationships, aligns opportunities, and even attracts the challenges your frequency permits. Do you wish to change your external experience? Don't affirm, don't declare. First, listen to the field you are already emitting. Observe the repetitions, hear the patterns. Pay attention to the symptoms, contemplate the architecture of your days, because that is the mirror. And the mirror does not lie, and the mirror does not give opinions, it only reflects. This realization is liberating, but also demanding. It demands constant presence, it demands energetic responsibility. It demands abandoning the illusion that the world owes you something, and beginning to live as what you truly are. The sole emitter responsible for your field. So cultivate the frequency you wish to see reflected. Do it not as a mental practice, but as a vibrational habit. Live in gratitude if you desire expansion. Live in peace if you desire order. Live in sufficiency if you desire fulfillment. And sustain that vibration without waiting for external validation. Because the field does not respond to hope. It responds to consolidated vibrational identity. And when that identity is clear, firm, and coherent, the field reorganizes itself without delay. This is how what once seemed miraculous becomes manifest. Not by chance, not as a reward, but through correspondence. What you project returns. What you sustain becomes law. What you emit takes form. The field does not forget. The field does not deny. The field only returns. Chapter 11, Visualization Without Hunger, the Hermetic Science. He who sees with urgency invokes lack. He who visualizes with certainty summons form. Not every inner vision is creative. Not all imagining is an act of magic. To visualize is not to fantasize, to escape, or to desire with overwhelming emotional intensity. To visualize in its purest and most operative sense is to emit an inner image, as if it were already real, without need, without hunger, without anxiety, because the tool does not manifest what it begs for, but what it recognizes as its own. The Hermetic principle governing creative visualization lies not in the strength of desire, but in the purity of the vibratory hold. What you see internally does not produce form because you long for it, but because you behold it from an identity that already inhabits it. When vision is contaminated by urgency, the resulting emission is not creation, but reinforcement of the void. And the obedient quantum field reflects not what you ask for, but what you project as atmosphere. This is what the initiates of Zosimus of Panopolis taught in the silent halls of Alexandrian Hermeticism. Do not see with the eye of desire, see with the eye that shapes. For desire screams the absent, but pure vision vibrates the present. This does not imply indifference, but vibrational detachment. It means that to create from vision, you must see what you desire as if it already is, not as something that could come if you do the right thing. This is the forgotten science of Hermetic visualization. Align the feeling with certainty, not with hope. The error of modern minds is turning visualization into an anxious ritual, a desperate plea disguised as positivity. But any visualization that begins with, "I don't have it," inscribes itself in the field as lack. And that lack, even if dressed in enthusiasm, is reflected faithfully. Because the universe does not listen to your images, it listens to the vibration with which you hold them. To visualize with hunger is to insist on what is missing. To visualize with certainty is to hold what already vibrates as truth. This was understood in the silenced Gnostic schools, where they did not teach how to ask, but how to remember the internal scene that the soul already knows on another plane. There they taught to enter a vibratory state where time collapses and the image is no longer a possibility, but an emanation, because the soul does not imagine the future. The soul remembers what already vibrates on another level of its field, and by remembering it without resistance, it precipitates it into the physical plane. This is the secret hinted at in the Gospel of Philip when it says, "Faith is the form of gold before the fire." What is already lived internally with silent conviction is ordered externally without struggle. Because the universe does not react to desire, it responds to the consolidated vibratory structure. So as you visualize with power, do not imagine with anxiety, do not force an image, do not dramatize the longing, but gently enter a simple, stable, habitual scene where you already live what you desire. Not a celebration, not an extraordinary outcome, but a transformed normality. For example, do not imagine the moment when you finally achieve something. Imagine an ordinary day where that is already integrated. How do you breathe in that life? What do you do when you wake up? What no longer worries you? What do you feel as you walk? It is not about seeing something ideal, but about feeling something natural. And there lies the science. When the body vibrates as if it already lived that image, the field changes coordinates because the quantum field does not respond to the content of the image, but to the vibratory state from which you hold it. To visualize is not to send an order, it is to inhabit a frequency code. That is why the wise men of the desert taught, "He who sees from need extends the journey. He who sees from joy summons without asking, for need repels, but vibratory identity attracts." And this is the most precise teaching. It is not you who must attract the form, it is the form that cannot avoid precipitating itself when you already vibrate as it does. This is how the true magician visualizes in silence, in coherence, in certainty. He does not imagine to obtain. He remembers what already is, and by remembering it, he summons it without stealing. Practice. Today, close your eyes and imagine a scene. Do not ask for anything. Do not invoke anything. Just feel how your body behaves if what you desire already is. What tone does your voice have? What space does your energy occupy? Stay there, and then live the day as if you had already returned from that place. Not as theater, but as resonance, because the universe does not respond to the image, it responds to the one who holds the image without tremor. Chapter 12, The Silence That Orders, the Art of the Dictum Conditum. To order is not to command, it is to align. The pure verb is incarnated geometry. Not every word creates, not every verb carries fire. Only the verb that has been gestated in inner silence, nourished by pure emotion, fine-tuned by vibratory identity, and launched from the core without contradiction, becomes dictum with dictum. the incarnated word that requires no effort, that does not beg, that does not waver, that orders without violence. The universe does not respond to the shout, it responds to the frequency, and that frequency is not modulated in speech, but in the internal state. Therefore, silence precedes the true creative act, and only from silence can one create a verb that does not divide. The ancient sages of the Chaldean lineage, whose science was buried by successive empires but preserved in nameless manuscripts, taught that to order is not to impose, but to remember the perfect form, to remember the original design, to remember the state in which matter obeyed without resistance. For the world does not need to be convinced, the world is waiting to be aligned. The dictum conditum is the art of speaking when there is no longer separation between what is said, what is felt, what is believed, and what is. When the verb is not will, but emanation. When the sound is merely the projection of a geometry already established in the field, when one is no longer seeking to provoke an effect, but to manifest a frequency that cannot help but become form. This verb born of vibratory silence does not repeat. It does not need reinforcement. Once pronounced from the center, it is enough to alter the configuration of the environment. This is how the ancient prophets acted. They did not beg, they did not negotiate. They said rise, and the form obeyed. They said open, and the field reordered, not by privilege, but because they emitted without distortion. The key was not in the word, but in the vibratory state from which the word emerged. And that state can only be reached in silence, not physical silence, but structural silence. The internal cessations, the stillness of the mind that no longer fears, the calm of emotion that no longer interferes, the alignment of the soul that no longer doubts. That silence is the matrix of the pure verb, and the pure verb does not declare, it reveals. It does not create from nothing, it calls from the form that already exists in the subtle dimension. The wise men of northern Mesopotamia said, "The word that comes from hunger drags shadow. The word that comes from the center generates worlds, and that is why dictum with dictum is not magic. It is vibratory geometry incarnated in sound, a frequency that has been held without fissure and that, when pronounced, acts not as a request but as law. Thus, to order is not to command, but to allow the form that already vibrates in the soul to imprint itself upon matter. And that is only possible when the verb is the legitimate child of silence. Do you want your word to create? Then do not repeat. Align. Align your emotion. Align your identity. Align your vibratory memory. And from that axis, let the verb be born without effort, without urgency, without the need to be heard. Because the true verb does not need to be believed to be fulfilled, it only needs to be pronounced from being. And the one who pronounces from being does not beg, does not demand, does not dramatize, he simply says, and what is said is. Chapter 13, the signal and the correction, the universe as instructor. What repeats is vibrational instruction. There is no randomness. There is echo. Those who still see the events of their lives as a series of random, disconnected, or whimsical happenings remain asleep under the deepest veil. Because in the universe nothing is random. Everything is vibrational. Nothing happens just because, but because it was emitted. Everything that manifests first manifested as the echo of a previous pulse, as a loving correction of a deviation, as guidance back to the original frequency. The universe does not teach with words, does not correct with punishments, does not educate with doctrines. The universe reflects, and when the signal you emit is not aligned with your essential design, that signal distorts in the field, and that distortion returns as a repeated circumstance, persistent blockage, recurring pain, repeated loss, or cyclical attachment. Not as a condemnation, but as a vibrating mirror that never stops telling you, this is what you are emitting, this is what you are tolerating, this is what you must align. There is no external destiny that decides for you. There is no higher entity that determines your life course as if you were a puppet of its decrees. The signal you yourself hold is the only law that organizes your experience. The ancients taught that repetition is not karma, it is instruction. The circumstance that returns is not punishment, it is a mirror. The pain that insists is not injustice, it is a vibrational clue. And if the universe keeps showing you a form, it is not because it has become blind, but because you have not changed the emission that summons it. Thus taught the wise of the Melchizedek lineage. Every form that persists is the response to an unrecognized frequency, and every unrecognized frequency transforms into a loop. And the loop is not broken by will, it is broken by vibrational consciousness, by changing the signal. You stumble over the same attachments, travel the same internal landscapes, even though you change your surroundings. The same obstacles chase you, though you swear you've learned. Then you are not condemned, you are being instructed. The universe will not cease reflecting the signal you hold until you modify its frequency at the core of your emission. And when that frequency changes, reality rearranges effortlessly. Not because you deserve it, not because now you understand it, but because there is no longer any resonance with the previous pattern. The signal is law, and any law that is not observed becomes a disguised teacher. The ancient soul does not need so much to speak to itself as to listen to what it lives. And every experience that seems to come from the outside is, in truth, a wave of return. That is correction. It is teaching without voice. And here lies the difference between the sleeping seeker and the conscious traveler. The sleeping one believes that life strikes them. The conscious one understands that life speaks to them, and when they listen, they give thanks. Not because they like the reflection, but because they have remembered that the reflection is the key. It is not about enduring what hurts. It is about reading the pattern that sustains it, and from there, transmuting it. That is why the initiates of the Rothano said, when something happens 3 times, it is not a mistake, it is instruction. And when something happens 3 times, it is not punishment, it is misaligned vibration. Every signal is an opportunity for vibrational correction, and every correction, if attended to without judgment or stubbornness, opens a new node of evolution. Do you want to know what you are emitting? Look at your reality, not your words, not your intentions, your atmosphere, your repetitions, your attachments. There, your predominant signal is revealed with absolute clarity. And if you don't like what you see, don't flee from the form, change the frequency. The universe never stops responding, but its response is not moral, it is quantum. It does not reward, it reflects. It does not punish, it returns. And when you return a purified, aligned, and firm signal, the field no longer has reasons to repeat the lesson. Then the form changes, not by luck, not by miracle, but because the geometry of the soul has been restored. Chapter 14, The Shadow as Hidden Programmer. What you do not name governs you. The unconscious is not passive, it is an active emitter. Long before the soul incarnates in a body, it has already drawn a vibrational map. This map, which in its purest form is the geometry of essential will, distorts in the dense plane due to unredeemed forces, unseen frequencies, and hidden aspects of consciousness that continue to emit without permission, without control, and most importantly, without being recognized. This collection of unrevealed contents, unintegrated powers, unacknowledged traumas, and unexpressed emotions was named the shadow by the ancient schools. And this shadow is not an evil energy. It is simply an unrecognized vibration that continues to act as a programmer of your energetic field. The modern mistake has been to reduce the unconscious to a passive file, a dark warehouse where unprocessed experiences are deposited. But in truth, the unconscious is an active emitting core, a source of constant vibration that shapes reality as strongly as conscious thought. The shadow creates not because you want to sabotage yourself, but because everything that vibrates emits, and everything that emits orders. And what you do not name from consciousness, you name from omission. What you choose not to look at, you project, and what you project from unconsciousness becomes errant destiny. That is why the ancients did not fear the darkness. They interrogated it, did not flee from their ghosts, they gave them a name. As the Egyptian initiates said in the texts never transcribed into Greek, there is no shadow that does not hold a verb, and there is no verb that cannot be pronounced from the purified soul. To name is not to declare. To name is to illuminate the pattern, and what is illuminated loses its autonomous power. The shadow, then, is not the enemy. It is an unmonitored programmer, and like every programmer, it writes orders. Orders of attachment, orders of failure, orders of loss, orders of self-sabotage. And these orders are not emitted with phrases. They are emitted with internal images, automatic emotions, bodily tensions, and unchallenged identity structures. The soul, when it neglects its shadow, turns it into the architect of the field. And that field, as we already know, does not distinguish between the conscious and the unconscious. It only reflects what it receives. That is why many life stories they do not wish, repeat patterns they do not understand, suffer attachments they did not choose. And when they ask, "Why is this happening to me?" the answer is not on the surface. The answer is in the shadow that was not named. And how is the shadow named? Not with judgment, not with drama, not with discursive therapy. It is named from the core. It is named with the fire of neutral consciousness. It is given a face, a sound, a form, and then it is integrated as part of the original design. Because every shadow is potential fallen power, and every fallen power waits to be rescued from the unconscious and aligned with the higher purpose. Thus, the sages of the ancient Chaldean tradition understood every personal demon is a virtue without use, every sabotage, a power without direction. The shadow is not destroyed, it is reprogrammed. And to reprogram it, one must dialogue with it. What part of me believes it cannot? What emotion prevents me from maintaining the vibrational order? What internal image continues speaking to me from the past? These questions are not made with the mind, they are made with vibrational attention, and the soul answers, the shadow reveals, and what was hidden becomes available energy. Because the unconscious, far from being a prison, is an inexhaustible source of creative emission, as long as its content has been transmuted into conscious presence. What you do not name programs you, what you name aligns, and what you integrate becomes a tool for manifestation. The true magician does not repress their shadow. They face it head-on, offer it their light, and turn it into the invisible column of their vibrational temple. Chapter 15, the final door, the mind as the potter of the cosmos. Everything returns, everything responds. The mind does not think, it shapes destiny. There is no silence in the universe, only frequencies unheard. There is no inertia, only uncomprehended emission. The entire cosmos is a network of resonances, a living matrix where every vibration finds its mirror, every impulse its reflection, and every thought its corresponding manifestation. In this great fabric, the mind is not merely a container of ideas or a logical faculty. It is the invisible potter of destiny, the shaper of form, the configurator of the field. There is no reality that has not first been molded in the furnace of the mind. There is no event that has not sprouted as a figure from the invisible mold of a sustained thought form. There is no matter that is not at its root a condensed idea. And not all ideas suffice. Not all thoughts are enough. Only that which is sustained with pure frequency, stable emotion, and undivided certainty descends from the abstract plane to the concrete plane, from the manifested mental world. For the mind, when it is not unified, does not create, it contradicts. And when it contradicts, it does not shape, it fragments. And the fragmented returns as chaos, repetition, and confused echo. Thus, the initiates from the Valley of the Double Moon taught, thought without axis is clay without form, but thought with certainty is the seal the field imprints. The mind is not useful for what it analyzes, it is creator for what it consolidates, because the universe does not respond to isolated thought, but to the continued mental emission that vibrates with structural coherence. Thus, to think is not to think is to shape, to think is to emit, to think is to sow structures in the ether that the obedient field transforms into forms, events, connections, and scenarios. The mind, then, is the final door of the creative process, because it is in it that all previous forces converge. The sustained emotion, the vibratory identity, the internal image, the spoken word, the redeemed shadow. All of this arrives at the mind as the center of synthesis, and from there, the total emission is launched. An emission that can only return, for what you send out returns, what you project becomes concrete. What you model with your mind is not only your reality, it is your lineage, your work, and your temple. And the quantum field, perfectly neutral, infinitely obedient, does nothing but return the exact echo of your predominant mental form. Thus the return is law. The law of return is not moral, it is not judgment, it is spiritual physics, it is energetic architecture. What you think with emotion, with certainty, and with aligned internal image transforms into a sequence that the universe reproduces without delay, and not to punish or reward you, but because it cannot do otherwise. The mind is then the brush of the soul, and the universe is the canvas. But there is no canvas without stroke, no form without design. And the design begins in the subtle space where your thought becomes structured vibration. That is why the ancient Hermetic sages, before pronouncing any word, purified their minds for entire days, because they knew that a single mental image, sustained with stable emotion, could change the geometry of their surroundings for generations. And that power was not reserved for the chosen. It was the power of every human being who remembers who they are and understands that thought is not a luxury, nor a fire, nor an intellectual exercise. It is a creative tool, a frequency of molding, a flame that, once cast, seeks matter to incarnate and always incarnates. That is why there is no deeper error than thinking without direction. There is no more lethal neglect than holding internal images of lack, doubt, guilt, or self-condemnation. Because the field does not decipher your intention, it deciphers your frequency. And your frequency is defined by what you think when no one is watching, by what you hold when you no longer speak, by what you emit when you no longer pretend. Thus the return is the ultimate test, the exact measure of your emission, and the most noble mirror of the soul, not to make you fear, but to make you assume. The mind does not rest. There is no pause in its emission. Therefore, everything you hold within it, even without words, eventually becomes a lived reality. What you think today is the atmosphere of your tomorrow. What you model now is the structure of your year. And what you emit without vigilance is the silent architecture of your next destiny. That is why this is the final chapter, not because it is the end, but because it is the origin of everything that is to manifest. The mind is the crucible. The mind is the door. The mind is the source code of form. And you, ancient soul, have remembered that you are not here to see what happens. You are here to decide what you emit and assume what you receive, because everything returns, and you are the cause. Amen.